people in attendance tonight, so that's great. Before we jump in, we have quite a large, a great panel here. This is our Greater Chippewa Valley. For more information, make sure you go to our website and Facebook page and check out what activities we have. And also our newsletter is on the website, so you feel free to check that out. I am Anne Marie McClellan. I am one of the co-presidents for the League of Women Voters, this chapter. And tonight I am going to moderate our spring elections panel discussion, and we're going to talk about what's coming in 2022. I don't know if we can move the slide up. Our first speaker is State Senator Kathy Bernier, who's going to talk about her view on what's happening in the legislators on election laws, followed by Sue McDonald, who is the Eau Claire County Clerk. Cheryl Miller is from the town of Red Cedar and will give us a perspective from a municipal county clerk's point of view. And then our League of Women Voters Voter Service group, Lori Miller and Jane Pedersen, are going to review some tools that'll help the voter. So we are going to start off with Senator Bernier and then take questions. Direct all the questions in the chat to the moderator. If you direct them to me, then we'll make sure that a senator gets to hear them. And then after she's finished, we will then move over to the rest of the panelists and let them give their presentations, and then we'll take questions at the very end. So thanks for all for being with us. We're planning on running till about 7:45. But let me introduce Senator Kathy Bernier, who is a representative from the 23rd Senate District. She has previously been a Chippewa County Clerk for over a decade, and then served 4 terms as a Wisconsin State Assembly. So she's very knowledgeable. She is the chair of the Committee on Elections, Election Process Reforms, and Ethics. So we are very pleased to have her with us today. And I'll just turn it right over. Thank you.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be with all of you. I have been narrowing in. I've had lots of media requests lately, and so I saw that you were the Chippewa Valley chapter, and that is important to me. So that's why I'm joining you tonight. I want to just preface the election bills that we have in front of us that were circulated on Friday. The reason is as you may know, I voted for a couple of election bills early on. I also voted against some that my colleagues produced that I didn't think hit the mark or were random or too harsh. So I tried to get them to wait until the Legislative Audit Bureau was finished with their audit. As it was, we got a twofer. Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty took 24 attorneys to review elections in the state of Wisconsin, and they did a very thorough job. So with that said, the bills that came out on Friday, once the LAB audit was out, I sat down with Senator Cole's staff, along with Senator Strobel and Darling's staff and our legislative council, and went through the LAB audit and thoroughly and picked out the recommendations that they had for a more consistent, streamlined election administration process where there's checks and balances and a directive for the Wisconsin Election Commission to promulgate rules where they had not. Currently, the Wisconsin Election Commission has been, well, not currently, ever since probably the State Elections Board, in my experience, has handed out guidance, but guidance doesn't have the force of law. And that was pointed out by LAB that they need to promulgate rules so that if somebody doesn't follow the guidance, it has a force of law. Guidance otherwise does not. So in the Legislative Audit Bureau, I summarized all of the recommendations that were pre-election, election day, and post-election for simplicity of the process. None of the bills make it harder to vote. They do not disenfranchise voters. They do not suppress the votes. They are primarily administrative functions to provide clarity and checks and balances in the electoral process. So the pre-election, the state of Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled that the ERIC data is reliable data, and not just the clerks should follow through on that information, that the Election Commission should likewise follow through. So if you're registered in more than one state and your most recent voting record was in Wisconsin, then that would be the most current information. If your most current voting record is in Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan, name a state, then you would be removed from the Wisconsin registration list. So this specifically gives Wisconsin Election Commission not only the authority, but the responsibility to follow through on all of the ERIC reports that we receive. In addition, we want to make it very clear that electronic voting equipment is never to be connected to the internet, which I think is clear, but we're going to make it more clear. And that just at the point-to-point connection between tabulators is when it can be connected, and that is more like a fax, a modem type communication between the polling place and the county clerks, but we're going to make that ever so clear. We also have found out from Wisconsin Election Commission, and the audit showed, for example, the Green Bay clerk up and left, and the mayor just appointed someone to take her place that had not been trained or certified or anything. And Wisconsin Election Commission is oftentimes unaware when a clerk leaves. And if it's close to an election, they're in a catch-22. So this just states that the governing body must inform the Wisconsin Election Commission when there's a vacancy. And that clerk needs to have at least 3 hours training right away. If that's not possible, then that needs to be reported to the county clerk. And the county clerk may have to designate duties for the municipality, because they are the chief election official in the county. On election day, we have the influence of private interest groups, which I was not in favor of all along. That is one function of government, is to run elections. And we don't need third parties. I use the example of if there is a Second Amendment initiative on the ballot and the NRA comes in and contributes $8 million to municipalities and counties, I'm sure that would not sit well on the left. So it should not be done at all. And in the next budget cycle, I have informed my friends and colleagues that they need to start funding county and local governments. So rest assured, I'm aware of that. Special voting deputies, if by chance an administrator chooses not to allow anyone in the facility, any visitors whatsoever, and turns away special voting deputies, there's more specific directions as to how those individuals in those nursing home and assisted living facilities shall be assisted and how they shall not be assisted. So in regard to correcting affidavit envelopes, we call them affidavit envelopes. I guess they're certificate envelopes now. It's hit and miss on whether they're cured and whether they're not cured, who's documenting, who's not. We're just saying you let the get a hold of the voter and or the witness and post it on the state list vote, and that's all you can do. You can't change information in a legal document. So, but you can let people know. And we're specifically stating in Racine County, they'd have no corrections on ballots because they had a really clear envelope. So we're specifying that in the bill. Post-election, we are selecting reporting units and creating a more systematic approach to auditing electronic equipment. And when it's audited, it's pretty random. Some municipal clerks do it, some county clerks do it. We would like it consistent with the Board of Canvass so that all of the audits are done when the County Board of Canvass occurs, and there will be specific deadlines for that. In addition, we'll have the Legislative Audit Bureau review those audit reports as a nonpartisan agency. And we want to keep them in the loop from here on out with the election procedures and systems, so that's a good thing. Indefinitely confined, I had drafted this bill and met with a lot of individuals in regard to people with disabilities. Part of the problem we had was misinformation as to why we had so many claimed to be indefinitely confined. The other part was it's on the same request for absentee, and a lot of people accidentally clicked when they did it online, indefinitely confined. And so we are going to make it very clear that indefinitely confined is for individuals with a disability, and we're going to spell that out. In addition, if they do have a photo ID or a Wisconsin ID, we would like to at least have one copy of that at some point, and then they can just continue to get their ballots as long as they vote in a general election, as long as they don't move, and nothing else changes. They certainly don't need to keep reapplying. And that, in a nutshell, is what are in all the bills, and you can read the detail for yourself. I can take questions.
Thank you. We have a couple questions here, but I was wondering, when do you expect these changes to take place? These bills were they voted on Friday, or just presented? What would be the timeline?
I can go through that with you. So the bill was circulated on Friday. We're getting colleagues to sign on as co-sponsors. We already have 3 and 4 senators on most of them currently. I will have a hearing on it next Monday, and then the assembly should follow along at some point. I don't really know what they're doing over there. And so then, we'll vote on them. We'll exec them out 2 days later. It's already scheduled on the calendar. And then I expect that we'll bring them up for a vote on February 14th, I believe. So with that said, I would love for the governor to, I hope he or his staff have read the Legislative Audit Bureau report and the recommendations that they made. Megan Wolf and I have been in frequent contact about the bills and the recommendations. We've asked for her input on all of them. So they're not really partisan bills, but I know that nobody knows it like I do. And so I work on these things. I would love for the governor to recognize the importance of them and sign them. But it seems that if it's an election bill coming from a Republican, he'll likely veto it. So we probably won't see any changes until we get a governor that will embrace it.
So thank you for that timeline. So our first question, I think you just answered it. The first question was Megan Wolf consulted in the formation of these new laws regarding voting?
Megan Wolf was consulted. We always consult her. I speak with her frequently. Believe it or not, the Assembly is going to have a hearing coming up on February 9th. Be watching for the agenda. There is some interesting information, but I understand Wisconsin Election Commission, Megan was invited to that. So we'll be hearing from her in front of the Assembly Elections Committee. So that's good.
Good, thank you. The next question, what about people who are out of town? Can they easily get an absentee ballot?
Oh, yes. It is so easy to get an absentee ballot nowadays. You can just go on the website and request an absentee. If you have a driver's license already downloaded and a copy at the clerk's office, then you're good to go. But otherwise, you can upload it. That was dear Scott McDonald's concern, is that people wouldn't be able to figure out how to upload their photo ID. So he decided that he'd let everybody know they could all be indefinitely confined, which I called him the next morning and shook my finger and scolded him and said, it's not a county clerk's duty, and the county clerk will probably agree, to interpret election law. We follow the guidance and the direction of the Wisconsin Election Commission and our laws. And county clerks, that's not their duty to interpret the law. They're to carry it out, but they're not to interpret it. So that is what really messed up indefinitely confined, is all of a sudden everybody got the message through social media that when in doubt, do an indefinitely confined, and you don't have to upload or copy a photo ID, and that was just wrong.
Thank you. Another question. Instead of questioning the authenticity of people with disabilities asking for absentee ballots, can we just allow becoming a permanent absentee voter regardless of any personal reasons for doing so? Many states already do this.
You can request an absentee for an election, one election or an entire year. If you are confined, I don't know what states that just allow everyone to do absentee forever. I'm not aware of that.
Right, maybe the question is like in Colorado, that's a state-wide
Oh, they're on
voting
ballot.
process.
That's a
as
whole
well.
different ball. Yeah. So in my experience with the secretaries of state and a county clerk, I served on the U.S. Election Assistance Commission Board of Advisors, and the Secretary of State in the state of Washington and Colorado. They had many years of planning for all mail ballots. And I don't think, from what I know from my constituents, I don't think they're ready to give up their polling places. So many prefer to walk in and cast their ballot in person. And so if we were to suggest that we go all mail balloting, that would be, I would say, 3 or 4 years in the planning. We would be throwing out all our current election laws and bringing in all new election laws, and then all new checks and balances in place. That's a big undertaking.
Thank you. Next question is, if those bills end up getting vetoed, can the Wisconsin Election Commission go ahead and make those changes?
Absolutely not. They can only carry out the current state law as it is set up. So they have been overstepping their bounds, according to some, with creating guidance when there's no law to back it up, or not promulgating rules when they need to have clear direction that's enforceable. But they can only carry out the law as it is intended or specified in the statute. They can only carry that out, and as long as they're following along with the statute. And Megan and the staff are generally pretty good about that. But sometimes they get in a catch-22 where they need to provide guidance because the law is unclear. But in the 12 years that I've been in the legislature, every single session, the executive director or somebody from Government Accountability Board, now the Wisconsin Election Commission, and I, along with the Ethics Commission, talk about where we need clarification. It's an ongoing process.
Another question. Will there be legislation addressing the use of ballot drop boxes? That's a controversial subject right now.
You know, I think down the line we will. The governor vetoed our Dropbox bill already. So we'll come back with one. So here it was in the bill. It was in one of my bills, but I ended up like, now it's become a big to-do on the Republican side. And I thought, well, I'm not going to put it in there and then end up not getting my bills through because it's in an omnibus bill, because some Republicans now don't want them at all, when in fact we already passed. I don't know. So anyway, I just took it out. I thought the governor's going to veto it anyway, so why, you know, they'll come back sooner or later. And what I said, you know, a Dropbox is not partisan. It's an inanimate object. It's there. It has to follow certain specifications and security, chain of custody requirements for the person who's emptying the box, to make sure that they get where they need to go at the certain time and they're picked up at a certain time, and this, the voters know that. But I think in the end, we might come back with that because, you know, I had constituents that either didn't get their ballot or found out their ballot never made it back, and they ended up having to go to the polls and vote on election day. So I think a ballot box, in my opinion, is there's more surety there than there is with the United States Postal Service. No offense if anybody works there.
That's where she's speaking from her real experience.
Another question. As you leave office, what do you think should be the primary concerns for Wisconsin citizens regarding our election process or our democratic process?
Well, rest assured that I have the same concerns, because I like to think I'm the all-knowing election legislator. But in my caucus, I've had a new senator, Eric Wimberger, and he's a lawyer and Marine JAG, as a matter of fact. And in my caucus, he's asked me some really good questions about the election commission versus the county election commission, state elections commission. He also delved into the movers list and how, even if they would have taken them off, the bulk of them have been accounted for and they did not vote more than once, and they did not vote in the state of Wisconsin. They actually did move. So I went to him and asked him if he'd be interested in chairing the elections committee, because I have a lot of confidence that he will. The information he brought to my caucus, he had to have gotten through the Wisconsin Election Commission, from the Wisconsin Election Commission. And so therefore I have a lot of confidence that he will have that constant conversation and give and take with WEC. So I think he'll be a good replacement.
Good. Well, another question. How about working on having early voting prior to election day?
We have early voting prior to election day. For 2 weeks prior to election, you can walk into the clerk's office and vote early. I would like Janelle Branchen in this assembly. We spent 4 years, 2 sessions working on that AVEO, early absentee voting, in-person absentee. I don't remember what it all stands for, but that's so you can walk in just like the election day process, where you show your ID, they give you a number, you sign the registration list, and then you can cast your ballot right into the machine. If that machine has a photo imagery and has the criteria we need. She has been too busy doing other things this session to push that bill with me. And I've tried to get it through the system. And so then we have a Monday count or a Monday prep bill that's coming out. I believe Staff Schultz is going to do that, where on Monday, the municipal clerks can go ahead and zip open the envelopes and mark them all down and give them a number and get them prepped for going in. That would only be good for a central count option. So that bill will be coming forward. Like I said, I'm hoping the governor really looks at these bills seriously and thinks, you know, they're really going to help take the pressure off WEC. They're going to help take the pressure off municipal clerks. So I'm hoping he does. I mean, I haven't given up hope that he's, I think he's going to veto them, but you know, there's that little bit of hope that he'll sign them. So I'm going to hold on to that.
Well, are you in favor of making Election Day a federal holiday, like the fall elections?
You know, well, first of all, that's a federal decision, so I'm okay with it either way. You know, I'm good. We have in-person absentee, we have absentee voting, you know, we have truck drivers and people. Matter of fact, I missed a couple primaries because February, I ended up doing a lot of work down here, and a couple times I thought, I forgot to request an absentee. So we have pretty good ways to vote early and vote by absentee. But if that turns out more people to vote at the polls on election day or to volunteer to work the polls, good with me. The nurses and doctors and everybody else still has to work though.
This might be our last question here, and it's a good one. Where can we find out resources if we wanted to look up the results of the Legislative Audit Bureau's audit and some of the other, like the will audit, some of the things if someone's interested in finding out more about what these audits turned up and wants to delve into.
Oh my gosh, you should be able to go into, search Wisconsin Legislative Audit Bureau election report. My goodness, that should pop right up, I would think. You know, otherwise, if it doesn't, contact my office. My office will give you a link to that. The will report was a very nice, fine bound report. They did a summary report, and they did a full, thick report on their findings as well. Let's just say there's a lot of information that is out there by individuals who don't recognize evidence versus conspiracy type things. And Will didn't go there with them. I just want you to know I'm going to put a good word for the Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty. They didn't go there. They did independent research. And did they find that Democrats took an opportunity to be very creative in turning out voters in November? Yes. But does that equate to fraud? No. And it cannot be proven otherwise. And who do you disenfranchise in order to make some of these people happy? I don't know what to do. I'm not a prosecutor. I am not a governor. I'm not in the executive branch. I am not a law enforcement officer. For them to keep hounding legislators who make the law. We're making the law better. We're making it more transparent, clear, more concise, better direction for the Wisconsin Election Commission. But we don't enforce the law. So for people to come to me and call me names because I'm not doing my job slays me. It's like my job is not to prosecute voter fraud. And if you can't talk to a district attorney about your evidence and the voter fraud, and you can't take it there and they can't run with it, what am I to do? So I think everybody needs to chill and understand the law. And, you know, Representative Branson is going to have another hearing with one of these people who think they have evidence. But why isn't that person at a district attorney's office providing that district attorney with the evidence? There's nothing a legislator can do to prosecute voter fraud. So this has not driven me to retire, although it has driven me to frustration. But there's certain individuals, I don't care if it's the left or the right, that have some pretty interesting ideas that those of us in the middle cannot comprehend. I hope I was politically correct on all of that.
I think so, you know, and speaking through the League of Women Voters, I think we all have the same goal, that we want fair elections and elections that are true and reliable, and we can believe in the results. And the League of Women Voters, especially our chapter here, like all of them, I guess, we're very active in the election process. We train people to go out and assist voters to make sure they know how to become registered voters. We try to help our clerks if they need any help, especially during COVID when everything was kind of crazy. And we work as observers. We work in the polls. That personally, I'll say, having done a lot of that, I have a lot of confidence in our election process. And it's been hard to listen to all this all across the United States, that the Wisconsin people don't know how to vote. And like you said, it's evidence. Let's see the evidence based. So.
Well, for the record, Wisconsin League of Women Voters almost always registers against my bills. I don't understand it. So they probably will on these. But I put my best foot forward. What can I tell you?
Right. Well, we're all after the same aims, ultimately, I'm sure. Well, we really appreciate you.
Madison, it's usually the Madison person who shows up to register against. So I won't hold any of that against you.
Oh, good. Well, we do really appreciate you coming out and talking to us. And this is a very important topic. And I'm sure there's going to be more news coming out, you know, as time goes on. So maybe we might be able to ask you to come back sometime and fill us in again, but we really appreciate your time tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, Megan and I will be on 60 Minutes next week. I think next week or the week after, whenever. So, so I was just talking to her the other day and I said, well, I got to do 60 Minutes. I've already done CNN a couple of times, and I don't know, a German newspaper, by the way. So, apparently I hit a nerve somewhere along the line, and it's making everyone excitable. I just tell the truth, say it like it is. There's voter fraud. I'm right there with you. I want to prosecute it. I want to make sure we do something about it. But you can't, you know, count the inactive voters or the active voters and whatever. There's usually an explanation for all of the things people don't understand. And I offered this Peter Berniger, I offered to sit down with him and Megan and the staff and go through all of his concerns. And he said, no, he was gonna be at Chanel Branch's committee meeting next week, so he didn't want to do that. And I thought, well, if your goal is to address the problems where they can be addressed, meeting in a assembly committee isn't going to address your concerns. But the blessing is Megan was asked to speak as well. And so I encouraged her to request to follow him so that she knows exactly, because she doesn't know exactly where his concerns lie. So at least I hope that's the way Chanel works it, so she can respond to the concerns that are brought up. But like I said, they should be sitting in a district attorney's office expressing their concerns. We don't have enforcement power.
Oh, well, thank you again very much for being with us, Senator.
I overstayed my welcome.
Oh, no, I'm sure everyone here is interested in what you have to say. So thank you very much. And we will, I'm just going to go and switch right over to Sue McDonald, who is our Eau Claire County Clerk, who's been in the county clerk's office for 10 years. So she's has quite a bit of experience, and I'm going to move right over to Sue in a minute. We are not the exact most technical people here, but we'll get there. Thank you, and here we go, Sue. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate having this opportunity to kind of explain, as far as the topic is election security, that's very, very broad. I've kind of identified about 5 areas in our office where we have to deal with security issues in terms of elections. So I'm just I've got like 10 minutes. I'll go over them, kind of discuss what we do as far as security in those areas. And then at the end, I guess questions then later on specifics you can ask me. So I'm going to share my screen here quick. And hang on a sec. Let me hit share screen first. Here we go. And share. All right. And can you see my screen? See a PowerPoint? Okay. I'm going to start here. I guess the first thing I want to define is what our office does not do, because it's kind of important. We get a lot of calls and questions for things that we are not responsible for maintaining. So I just kind of listed here sort of the things we don't do is we don't work at election day polling sites. We don't hire trained poll workers, take requests, or send absentee ballots, mailings, or manage drop boxes, which is a real hot topic right now. Those things are done at municipal level by the city, village, or town clerk. So there may be some things coming up that the municipal clerk after me would be able to answer your questions. So the 5 areas that our office is responsible for are, the first thing being, one of the things we do election related is we collect and verify candidate information. We collect paperwork for our county candidates. We verify, their signatures and that they're in the districts. We also compile information from school districts and municipals, and we make sure that we get all that information in one place so that we can design and order ballots for the election. So, as far as security goes, there's kind of our number one thing, first thing that we do. We do design, order ballots, and then we program in our office the DS200 and the express vote election equipment. So there's security protocol that we follow with all of that. So again, in questions later on, if you've got specifics, and then I just put on there, I also published the notices of elections. So that's a kind of a legal thing more than a security thing. But Our office provides WISP vote management for 14 of our municipalities. In order to be, in WISP vote, there's strict security measures there that we take as far as having, logins, passwords, pins, fobs, lots of security measures that the state has in place. So we're inputting information for those municipal clerks, maintaining their current voter information, absentee requests. We print their poll books and update their absentee logs for elections. Another area where we work is the election results. So we program the DS200s, and then on election day, we receive those transmissions from the clerks. They modem them over. There's some, specific, unique ways that they get transmitted over. It's on a completely private network. There's nothing that's transmitted, nothing on the internet. That's why we always kind of assure people that there's nothing that anybody can really do to intercept this transmission. It comes into our secure servers. There's passwords. There's all kinds of safety measures in place for that information coming in. We compile and report those election results. So everything that comes into us, we put together, we report them, and then double checking. We have county canvas where we verify, we go over, I can, show you a county canvas minutes from the canvas where it shows, step by step, every single number on the tape versus every single voter that, was in the poll book, making sure every number is matching, and if it's not, having a reason why. So for whatever reason that number was off, getting information from the inspector statements and the poll lists and the clerks themselves to make sure that the elections are accurate. We do that for our county level and higher results. Municipal races, school board races, those are all canvassed at that level. So those are that's something that we don't have any control over the final results there. We do report them on election night, but the final results are verified at those levels. Another thing we do is we collect and store post-election materials. So the day after the election, all of the clerks are responsible for bringing us their ballots, their inspector statements, absentee envelopes, and all their programming comes back to the county. We store all that in a secure area. Everything's locked up. We are responsible for being able to provide that information, and we make sure that it's all organized and easily obtainable if somebody requests it. So kind of that's the last thing I put on there is open records requests. So some of this we end up working with the clerks after the election. They're trying to balance their books. So they're requesting from us, they would like to see a page of a poll book or an absentee envelope that they turned into us. They want to verify that the signature was right, or check on a number, or check on a voter to see if they signed the poll book, that kind of stuff. So that's where we're responsible for kind of helping them get the information they need to do their final paperwork. But everything comes back to our office, and that's where it's stored. So in the last year or so, we have gotten a lot of open records requests. And I put here fulfilling them as appropriate for items that we maintain or store. We do get some requests for information that we don't keep at the county level. And then as far as some of the stuff, depending on security of certain things and whether or not some of the information can be shared as far as some of the IS end of things, that's where it's just as appropriate. And we work with our corporation counsel as far as if we get a request that we can't fulfill or need to scale down and make it as available as we can. Certainly we fulfill everything that we possibly can. And we've got nothing to hide. So I guess that's kind of an overview of what our office does. Again, if there's something later on, if somebody wants to have a specific question about any one of these, let me know. So I will stop sharing this for now, and then all right, did you want to move on now, Anne Marie, to the next speaker and take the questions at the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. We will move over now to Cheryl Miller, who is the clerk for the town of Red Cedar. And Cheryl's going to talk about everything from the municipal clerk's perspective, which seems to have a lot of responsibility.
Okay, thanks for having me up. My name again, Cheryl Miller, I'm clerk for the town of Red Cedar here in Dunn County. Our town borders the city of Menominee. We have over 2,000 residents and over 1,500 registered voters. So we're not a very small municipality. And I've been a clerk for over 13 years. I was asked to talk about today a little bit about changes in the voting booths here in Dunn County, because we did get new election machines, and also what it takes to become a poll worker and training for poll workers. So right now, as of right now, Dunn County will have new election equipment this year. Our old machines were aging out at the end of 2022, and support for the machines will no longer be available. So that's why we had to order new machines. Dunn County municipalities decided to purchase new Dominion ImageCast evolution equipment at the end of 2019. And towns budgeted for these machines in 2020 and 2021. The machines have optical scan tabulators that take paper ballots only. Voters will fill in an oval next to the name on the ballot rather than connecting an arrow, which was done previously. Our new version of the ICE, which I'll call ICE, has been approved for use by the Wisconsin Elections Commission, and at least 15 counties in Wisconsin exclusively use these machines. So as of right now, there will not be any more Edge touchscreen machines in Dunn County. Okay, so, and then I just want to bring up, unfortunately, there's been a lot of false and misleading information put out there about Dominion machines. When in my case, when residents learned after the 2020 presidential election that we had purchased Dominion machines, I received a phone call from someone asking why we decided to go with those machines after all the problems with them that we had supposedly had at the last election. The person insisted that the accuracy rate of the Dominion machines was less than 60%. So I was trying to reason with the person. The WEC has pages and links of all, correct information, debunking all these claims, but it just, people are going to believe what they want to believe. Conspiracy theories like Senator Bernier had brought up before. I also received letters stating that there were accusations all over the country that Dominion voting machines were used to falsify election results, and that Dominion machines are specifically designed for that purpose. I even, received also that they were saying that even though election officials state that election machines in Wisconsin are not connected to the internet, the person in the letter said it's yet to be proven definitively in the courts and that there is good evidence to the contrary. And they also asked Dunn County municipalities to cancel the contracts to buy the machines because of the appearance that these machines may have been intentionally used to commit voter fraud. I've also received calls and people talking, stating that the machines flip votes. And I know the county clerk at the time, she was inundated with phone calls and emails about, purchasing the machine. So it's been quite a challenge right now. I want to also mention that the Edge and the Optech Insight voting equipment that we are replacing were owned by Sequoia, and Sequoia was purchased by Dominion in 2010. So technically our old machines were programmed and supported by Dominion, and all the software, firmware, hardware on the old machines was actually owned by Dominion. So it's, it's unfortunate that with all the misleading information out there that some people become disenfranchised because we're using these machines. Personally, I participated in 4 recounts while working as a clerk in my 13 years, where we hand counted every paper ballot and ran them back through the tabulators, and the results were 100% accurate every time. So again, as Bernier said, people don't have a good concept of how elections are run. Because I know when I had my first recount, I started in 2009. I think it was in 2011, there was a recount, and I was just utterly amazed at the process and everything that the county clerk's office went through, which Sue had mentioned, you know, checking the poll books and then hand counting everything, putting everything back through the tabulators. And as I said, 100% accuracy. I was also asked to provide information on what it takes to become a poll worker and training requirements. So a poll worker is an election inspector who conducts duties at the polling place on election day. And that could be including issuing ballots, registering voters, monitoring voting equipment, counting votes. Under Wisconsin law, employers are required to grant an unpaid leave of absence to anyone appointed to serve as an election official if the employer receives at least 7 days notice. A poll worker must be a qualified elector of the county where the polling place is located. They must be able to speak, read, and write fluently in the English language, have strong clerical skills, be able to solve problems, be an effective communicator, and not be a candidate for any office to be voted on at the polling place. Poll workers are appointed for 2-year terms. Nominations can be by the Democratic or Republican Party, or you can also apply directly to your town, village, or city. Party nominations are due by November 30th in odd years. And then boards, town boards, city boards, councils will appoint in December of the odd year for the next election cycle. The election cycle for this year or this term would be January 1st of 2022 through December 31st of 2023. Poll workers, they're compensated by the municipality, or they can actually choose to volunteer their services. The job of the poll worker is to facilitate democratic process, not to act in the interest of a specific party. I've actually had to talk to poll workers at times because there's just, it happens, you know, they start, you know, talking about things that they shouldn't be talking about. There's no electioneering at the polling place by poll workers, and that's defined as an activity intended to influence a voter's ballot choices. Attire, they're not allowed to have, it shouldn't be any politically themed attire or materials, clothing, or buttons supporting a candidate, political party, or ballot initiative. There shouldn't be any conversations about ballot candidates, political platforms of candidates, incumbency information, or opinions on ballot initiatives, such as referenda. And then poll workers also should avoid other political topics of conversation that could violate electioneering rules or make voters uncomfortable. Polling places are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So some poll workers can work full days, or they can work a split shift, excuse me, if the municipality has that option. Clerks are required by state law to provide training to poll workers. This training is supposed to provide all of the necessary information and knowledge to be a successful poll worker. Unfortunately, there are no set standards for poll worker training, and the quality of poll worker training can vary from town to town, city, village. One of the recommendations in the recent LAB report on elections administration in the 2020 cycle is to have the WEC create standards specifying the content of training provided to election inspectors. In my experience, I believe that set standards for poll worker training would be good so that there's consistency throughout the state and at polling places. I know that there's been in certain municipalities, I know that some college students were turned away. You know, and that would probably be because the poll workers weren't trained. It gets a little confusing with the students and their IDs or what they can have, or letters from the college and stuff. So I think that any training that the recommendations by the LAB has put out there for, you know, poll workers, election officials, special voting deputies and stuff like that, I think is a really good thing, because I don't think it can ever be undertrained. And I do know that right now there's a lot of webinars and online training, which is really nice, because in the past we didn't have that. So we had to You know, I still train, like my poll workers, I train in person, but I know a lot of times that if they can't come out, or if there's something that, you know, we want them to be trained on right away, that there's webinars available and training. They have training through the Learning Center on the WC website, which is really nice for poll workers can go in and watch videos and stuff like that. And sometimes, you know, a lot of the municipalities will pay the poll workers too for training, which is pretty typical. So, and that's about all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah, no problem.
Now we're going to turn it over to Jane and Lori to talk about tools that voters need to know about.
Okay. Welcome. I'm Lori Miller, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters Greater Chippewa Valley, and also part of the team that conducts voter registration trainings for volunteers who work at voter registration drives. And Jane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Jane Peterson, League of Women Voters, and have worked extensively in a lot of the different phases of voter registration. And Lori's going to take the most of this presentation, and I look forward to listening to Lori. So.
Okay, and I am going to share my screen. Okay, and I hope everyone can see something that says voting tools. One of our favorite voting tools at voter registration drives is My Vote, wi.gov, because it is Wisconsin's online method for registering to vote. It's also just a really good resource for answering voters' practical questions about what to do on election day. Let's see. Oop. For some reason, my screen is not advancing. Hang on one sec here. Okay, all right. We may just have to look at it this way. Okay, so voters, regardless of their registration status, can put in their address and find out things like what is their municipal clerk's name, their elected officials, where they would vote and the hours and the location, and what is the next election, including what would be on their ballot. Once they are registered, they'll be able to do other things like checking their address and name on file, and then looking up their voting activity for the past 10 years. Once you are registered, you're also able to request an absentee ballot. And what is great about that is it's a very quick process from the time that you register or request that ballot, and the municipal clerk is able to act on it. And then to track that progress and all the way through when the municipal clerk receives your completed, meaning voted ballot. And I'm going to switch over right now to the live site of myvote.wi.gov. So I'm going to stop sharing this one and then go to My Vote. Okay, I'm going to focus mostly on what you can see as, as a voter, whether you're registered or not. And one of the things is you would go through searching by address. So I'm going to, Jane has permitted me to use her information because she has a little bit more options than I do right now. Okay, so for somebody at her address, what this tells you is your polling place, the address, also the hours, Gives you a handy dandy little map if you couldn't find your way around the town of Tainter. And then also what is going to be on, well, it's the next election and what is going to be on that ballot. And she is going to be voting or able to vote on the February 15th spring primary, and she'll be voting for a school district board member. In the township that I live in, there is no local race. So my next election is April 5th, the general election. And so there's no ballot to be seen. It also will tell you, regardless of whether you're registered or not, who is your municipal clerk. And I think you've just, you know, from hearing the two speakers, well, actually all three speakers talked about your local election expert is really your municipal clerk. So it's important to get to know who that person is. And right here, it'll tell you, you know, who it is, verify that it is for the town of Tainter. And then when you click on more information, you'll find out where that clerk is physically located and then the mailing address. And for a lot of the rural townships, it's probably going to be the clerk's home, you know, that you're at, that you're going to be mailing or visiting, and a phone number and email that you can reach them. What's on my ballot? It's just another, you know, way of finding that information. And again, you would put in the address and it takes you right to the same thing. This one is a little bit more specific about, you know, what you're voting in. I think on the last screen, if it had it, it was kind of hidden, but this plainly says it's the spring primary and February 15th. Registering to vote. You know, if you were ready to do that, you would click this. And then once you're registered and you'd like to vote absentee by mail, you would click on this. I'm going to use Jane's information again to search by name so you see what happens. And this is typically when we're at a voter registration drive, somebody will say, you know, I don't think I'm registered. And we'll say, we're going to check. You know, so we will guide the person through on their device, their phone or their tablet. Sometimes we'll have one of our own, but a lot of times it's working with the person's own device. So putting in that first name, and then you get something like this. You know, it's not uncommon to see somebody with a common name having, you know, some multiple records with that same birth date. Now, in this case, both of these, well, are Jane or were Jane at one point because she moved. But for somebody who hasn't registered before and they look at this and say, you know, neither one of those are my, you know, is me. You'll notice the button that says none of these records are mine. And when you click that, it will take you automatically to the register to vote sequence. There's a lot of information here. And just because this is such a very, you know, brief overview, I'm going to point out the two really critical pieces of information. In order to register online, you need to have a valid, unexpired Wisconsin driver's license or Wisconsin state ID card. And then in order to register online, you can only do that 20 days or more away from the next election. You can still register to vote, you know, if you're within 20 days, but you can't do it online. You're going to need to either visit the clerk's, your municipal clerk's office, you know, and use a paper form, or actually register at the polling place on election day. But going back to, well, we kind of reviewed, Jane will be able to see the same things, you know, that we just looked at for, you know, my polling place. I think I will put her name in one more time just so you can see. The one button that I think is really helpful when you are registered And this time we are going to click the real Jane. And then it's my voter info. That is kind of, the first place to stop to kind of, cover all those 5W kinds of questions that you might have about registering, including your status. And it says here plainly, you're registered to vote. Gives her the opportunity to update a name and address if she needs to do that. And the critical thing about having this correct is it needs to be correct and current in 2 places: the Wisconsin Department of Motor Vehicles website, as well as My Vote. And we always recommend that people, first of all, take care of the Department of Motor Vehicles information, because the 2 databases look at each other and they have to have matching information, but they don't swap information back and forth. So you have to correct your name and address in both places. Just a little bit smoother if you start with the DMV and then go into My Vote, but you can do it the other way. There's just maybe an extra step or 2 in there. Absentee ballot. If you have requested an absentee ballot, this is the process I was talking about. It'll just talk you right through from the time that you requested it to when the municipal clerk approves it, when that municipal clerk is preparing your ballot, when the clerk sends it, and even gives you an estimate about when you might receive it in the mail. Then once you get the ballot and you vote your ballot, you make your choices and return it to the clerk. This button will then become activated like the rest. And to me, that's really reassuring, knowing where you are in that process. The other kind of bit of reassuring information you get is you have a record of your voting activity, not who you voted for, just that you have a recorded vote in an election. So if that ever crosses your mind, did my vote count? Did they count my vote? This is where you would go to check. And then it tells you the voting method, as well as where you voted. And you can, skim back over the years and take a look and see, I know somewhere in here, there was one at the polls. Yeah, there we go. So I don't know, I sometimes like to go back and look at mine. Jane, and before I leave this part, is there anything you want to mention?
No, I think there's a lot of little pieces of information that a more in-depth training would really fill in on. This is just, again, a brief overview of My Vote and what you can find and what you can do.
Right.
But to actually, go in and help people register or help yourself or a family member, it's really well explained throughout that process of register to vote. So if you actually are helping somebody or doing it yourself, read it. It will walk you through the whole process, from going to the DMV to change your address if you need to, or how to change your name and what that process is as well. So it is really a handy website. So that's all I have to add, Lori.
Okay. I'll skip over, I think, the steps that are covered for registering to vote, because that is what we really do go into on voter registration trainings. And we do have 2 coming up, January 21st and March 1st. They're both Zoom formats from 6:30 until 8 p.m. These are available to everyone, regardless of whether you're a member of the league or not, and they're free. And it's very easy to sign up for them. Beginning tomorrow, they will have registration links on our website calendar. So just open up our website, go to the calendar, click on either January 21st or March 1st, and it'll take you to, the registration portal. You're asking yourself, so, why would I want more information about this? And it would be because you're interested in finding out about how to register, in Wisconsin, not just for yourself, particularly if you're already registered, but to help other people. And that could be, just simply your own circle, your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. But it could also be for the community at large, through voter registration drives that are conducted by the league or, other groups. And we don't expect you to become an expert. We don't train you that way. But we do train you to become comfortably knowledge in helping somebody, through this registration process, and also to know where to, who are the experts to ask questions you can't answer. And, shocker, one of them is your municipal clerk. Another one is the Wisconsin Elections Commission, which has a very good website with information and is available to take people's calls, during normal business hours, Monday through Friday. And they answer calls from, citizen voters, all the way up to elected officials and everybody in between. And probably the question everybody has in their mind is, the expert thing. And again, you do not have to be an expert to do this. The one other thing I'll quickly go over is the league has another website called Vote for 11, where we post information about candidates' positions on issues. And it's just a handy resource for, a race. There's 2 or 3 candidates you can read side by side, their answers to questions, and their answers in their own words. They submit them in writing. Now, the caveat to this is that, we need to know what are the issues out there, and also that people need to return answers. And as you can see, looking over on the right, at the local level, we are looking for more information about issues in local races, pretty much in that tri-county area of Dunn, Chippewa, and Eau Claire counties. But for city council, county board, school board. So if you're thinking, well, I'm going to be voting for county board this year, and there is a county issue, I would really like to know where they stand on it, the candidates. Contact Elizabeth Fisher, and that is her email address, and describe what that issue is so that we can come up with some good questions to send out to the candidates. And that does it for me.
Thank you very much, Lori and Jane, for that informative presentation. I know we are almost out of time. If you would all like to stay with us for a few minutes while we take a couple of questions. There is one question for Sue. As someone was wondering what the DS200 was.
The DS200, that's our election equipment. That's the machines in Eau Claire County where you fill out your paper ballot. That's the machine that you feed the ballot into that records the votes, takes an image of the ballot as well. And then that information is recorded on a memory stick, and that's what's returned to the county, and it transmits the results from that machine to the county at the end of the night.
Thank you. Also, there's a question, and this I guess it would go both to Sue and Cheryl, being Eau Claire and Dunn counties. Are you going to be using drop boxes in the upcoming election?
Cheryl, you can answer that one. I don't have the Dropbox questions.
Oh, you're muted, Cheryl.
I was trying to be good there. Personally, I don't use a Dropbox. Like I said, I have a mail slot in our town hall door. I do know that the city of Menominee had a Dropbox inside of the doors, I believe, in the building. I know Town of Tainter, I think, had one. Town of Dunn has one. The Town of Dunn has one outside, but it's locked up and attached somehow to their building with chains or something. I don't know. But that's all I know for our towns. Like I said, yeah, the city of Menominee has them. As for having them in different locations, I don't know. I don't live in the city. But I do know, yes, that there are a number of municipalities in Dunn County that have drop boxes.
There's, when Lori was giving her presentation, the last slide on vote 411 did not make it through. I think we had some problems, technical issues. So I'm going to see if you can't show the vote 411.
Okay. Well, and can you, oh, let's see, can you hear me now?
We
Yeah, we
can
can
hear
hear
you
you.
and we can
All right.
see it.
All right.
There
I
it is.
can see the slide, yeah.
Okay. All right. I think it was more operator error. That was very diplomatic of you, Anne Marie. But anyway, so this is vote 411. And the contact information that you need for Elizabeth Fisher is at the bottom here, liz@psmc.com.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we did put out an email to all the league members and friends asking the same question. And Liz's email is also in that email that came from the League of Women Voters Greater Chippewa Valley, if you have that in your inbox hanging around.
As long as I have this up, can I mention something I forgot to say?
Yeah.
Is regarding voter registration drives. If you are curious about what happens at these drives, and if you would be a good fit to be a volunteer, the person to contact would be Jane at the email address here. And I'll stop sharing.
And I think that is the last question for our speakers here. So thank you, everyone, for showing up. Sue for the representing the county, and Cheryl Miller, who is also the treasurer for our chapter, and Lori and Jane, who serve as voter service. They're in charge of our voter services for the chapter. So thank you very much for showing up. And just our upcoming events, we're going to have a school board forum for Menominee. There's a primary there, 7 candidates for 6 slots. So all 7 candidates will be there at the forum on February 7th, and it will be live streamed with good technical assistance. So everything should go smoothly. Please submit any questions by February 1st. If you go to our calendar, here's a copy on the left there of what our calendar looks like. If you click in on any of those titles, it'll give you more information, and it will tell you where to submit your questions for the school board. So February 1st, which is tomorrow, so please think about it. And then we are going to celebrate Women's History Month and honor the suffragists at the Mabel Tainer Theater on March 3rd. It's a dramatic reading that's given by the Eau Claire Women in Theater, who wrote it. It's going to be great. It's free, an all ages event. We're going to have a social hour after. So please put that on your calendar. And the league is sponsoring Books and Beyond. We're reading this Tenderland right now. The meeting is the 17th. Keep an eye out on the calendar. It changes from month to month. Sometimes we'll have a book, sometimes we'll have a speaker, and it's all very casual, and just go to the calendar and look for it. And also, most importantly, the election, the February 15th spring primary and the April 5th spring election coming up. So we want to thank you all for showing up and spending your couple hours here, almost your evening with us, and get out there and go vote. Bye, everyone, and thanks to all the speakers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right. I'm going to stop recording. Yes.